Hi guys, so today I want to be talking about this month's weekly digest or the deep dive, which is all going to be about recovery. And I think it's one of these low-hanging fruits, really, or topics that people don't really pay much attention to, and instead they focus more on, say, overall fueling. It could be, say, supplements, obviously training itself, and it's one of these areas where it's not difficult to do. However, it can have kind of quite a big impact in terms of performance. Now, I think what you need to be careful with this is you have to be a little bit intuitive in that your goal will obviously dictate how much attention you need to pay to recovery. If it's just body composition and you're training 3 times per week, and a lot of that's low intensity training or just say strength training, it's not really going to be an issue. In these circumstances, you really want to focus on kind of totals first, okay? So overall calories, overall macros, not even overall macros, just think get your protein nice and high, have plenty of food, or eat the right amount, and also just think about plenty of color or a fairly kind of broad nutrient spectrum. However, when it comes to, say, performance in sports where volume is quite high, okay, so you're talking endurance sports, you're talking running, it could be triathlon, it can be, say, hybrid athletes doing a lot of strength training and cardio endurance as well, so CrossFit, high rocks, all these kind of different things are going to require fueling strategies, okay, not fueling, so recovery strategies. And more importantly, if you're going to be training, say, multiple times per week, especially twice per day, you really have to think about this. So I won't kind of bang on anymore. Really, when it comes to recovery, what I like to do is I like to focus on the 4 R's, okay? And when I talk about the 4 R's, you might have seen this in my book before, but we talk about refuel, rehydrate, repair, and revitalize. Just want to quickly go through what they mean and kind of how you can apply it to your circumstances. So the first one really is refuel with carbohydrates. Now, this is going to be dependent on kind of the session that you're doing. Now, when we use the 4 R's, this is mainly for people who are going to be training twice per day, or it's going to be after a depleting session. So this is going to be a high intensity session. So remember what I've spoken about before, that if intensity will dictate what fuel source you use. So if you're exercising at high intensity, you're going to be ripping through carbohydrates. So I think anything above your anaerobic threshold, zone 4, zone 5, VO2 max efforts, threshold efforts, long intense CrossFit sessions, high rock sessions, etc., etc. So with this, you're going to be draining your carbohydrates. So with that, we need to refuel, okay, or replenish your carbohydrates with carbs. And in terms of numbers that we look for, we're looking for 1 to 1.2 grams per kilo of target body weight. Now, the reason why I highlight target body weight is for people who need to lose a bit of body fat, okay, there's no point going for your kind of actual weight because you're just going to be over consuming food, okay? So for this, if you're, say, about 80 kilos or 90 kilos, your, say, fat-free mass or your target body weight is probably going to be, say, like 70. So you would have 70 grams of carbohydrates after you exercise. Now, in terms of the type of carbohydrates that you're having, to be honest, it doesn't really matter that much. And you probably, for those who've got kind of any reports with me, you can just try to check your guidelines here kind of to choose what you need. In terms of kind of the actual type, though, so you might have heard of, say, like high GI or low GI. High GI, say high glycemic index, these are the foods that are going to get into your system quickly. Now, if you're not training, again, within 12 hours, I just wouldn't worry. So it can be, say, more, say, like health foods. So this is where you could have, say, things that are higher in fiber, a lot more veg, and say foods that it could be, I don't know, like beans, lentils, etc. However, if you are going to be training again within 12 hours and specifically within 8 hours, this is where you really have to think about high GI, okay? So the more sugary, readily available carbohydrates. This is where you're going to be looking for things like white pasta, say bagels with jam, with honey, all these kind of bad sugars which people kind of demonize. However, all that you've got to think is that you're replenishing your stocks for that next session. The other thing as well is that after a session, so people talk about the anabolic window with protein. However, it's more kind of personal when it comes to carbohydrates, because after kind of exercise, your muscles are very receptive to sugar. So lots of these transported proteins, GLUT4, they sit on your muscle cells and they're going to take in sugar. Okay, so after the exercise session, this is the best time to replenish your glycogen stores, your carbohydrates. So the point is, get some bloody carbs in your session. Okay, so the next one is rehydrating with fluid. What we try and do with this, again, think about hard sessions, high intensity sessions. We want to be having 1 litre of fluid for every 1 kg of body weight that we've lost. So people don't do this, okay, but weigh yourself before, weigh yourself after. Especially important for endurance athletes. If you're going to be losing a lot of, say, weight from sweat and fluid loss, make sure you're getting that back on board. Ideally, you can get this from a mixture of sources, but because people talk about electrolytes, yeah, they're important, but providing you're kind of having a spectrum of, say, foods throughout the day, you're seasoning your foods correctly, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. The next one is kind of protein, and just in terms of actual kind of how much you should be having, we're looking at about 0.3 grams per kilo of target body weight again. So again, maybe about 90 kilos, I need about 30 grams of protein. Sources doesn't really matter. I think again, you could look at the whole, so fatty cuts of protein, proteins within mixed meals, they're going to get into the system slightly slower. However, providing you're getting, say, protein throughout the day anyway, that's going to matter most. Okay, so this is just kind of just making sure that you're kind of ticking those boxes rather than worrying that you need to stress about or being perfect with this. So the next one as well is revitalize with fruit and veg, and this is again something that people don't particularly do. And all this means is that you need to be having some sort of colour in the diet. Foods that are particularly high in, say, vitamin C and E, and these are going to be, say, high or antioxidants. These antioxidants can help with, say, things like inflammation, recovery. However, you've got to be a little bit careful with this, that if you have, say, too much of these types of foods, they can actually blunt adaptation. Now, if you're just having, say, like berries or whatever, that's fine. You don't need to stress about it. But don't feel that, say, more antioxidants are better. So you can get some of these high dose antioxidants now, like say Cherry Active, where the goal is to reduce inflammation and pain. Now, day to day during your exercise, you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, the whole point of this adaptation comes from breaking yourself down. Okay, comes from inflammation. So don't use these types of things during normal training blocks. These are only to be used for, say, intense training blocks if you're going to be, say, coming to a competition period, or you're actually going to be competing like a multi-day event or multi-event day. Okay, so that's where you're going to be using these types of things. So this just gives you a bit of an example as well. Go through that if you have got access to this. So again, you're looking for the carbohydrates, the fluid, the protein, and also the fruit and veg. So let me know if you have any questions about this. What's your favorite kind of go-to recovery snack meal? And yeah, give it a go this month and see how you get on.